Doctor Who, like any television show shot using real locations, is a time capsule of the world in which it was created. The Season 14 serial, The Talons of Weng-Chiang, used several streets in London to effectively recreate the Victorian period. But the places were chosen because they were deserted and decaying. As a result of their condition, they were soon either demolished or heavily restructured into the upmarket Thameside tourist trap they are today. The footage shot for the Talons of Weng-Chiang now offers some of the only views on record of the buildings that have been destroyed or remodelled. But, frustratingly, most of the film footage of the TARDIS landing site was cut from the broadcast version, and is now therefore lost. Not only are we unable to enjoy this missing scene, but trying to find out exactly where it was shot in order to appreciate what we're missing is an almost impossible task. But we like a challenge. And, thankfully, to aid in our quest, there are two pieces of contemporary footage from other productions of the time which show some excellent views of the exact places where the Doctor Who production team was working. So, using detailed comparisons between screen grabs and old photos, let's travel back to the London of the 1890s, which was really the London of the 1970s, to explore the alleyways of the Clink and enlist the help of Sherlock Holmes to find exactly where the TARDIS landed. If you enjoy detailed investigations into TV productions, then we'd be very grateful for your subscription, as we are working hard to build our channel. If you're looking for some way to further express your gratitude, we would love your support on Patreon, where you can see clips and early videos, and get your name in the end credits. Alternatively, you can now become a channel member on YouTube using the join button below to get the same perks as Patreon. We work really hard to bring you the best content we can, and we sincerely appreciate everyone's support, even as simple as clicking the like button. And now, on with the show. Like much of the Talons of Weng-Chiang, the opening scenes are shot on location on videotape in a period setting. But the production crew's trip to the beautiful Royal Theatre on Guildhall Road, Northampton, is not our focus. We want to explore the warrens of the capital and its murky underbelly. The first exterior shot uses a bit of editorial sleight of hand by showing a shot of Wapping Old Stairs to establish where we are, even though the action is about to immediately cut to somewhere entirely different. This is the original map used by the production team to identify their chosen locations, and they labelled the stairs as Location E. Our investigation really begins with the landing of the TARDIS, a mile to the west of Wapping Old Stairs, south of the river. The production location map notes this as Site C. Modern research has simply noted the TARDIS location as being on Clink Street, which is certainly technically correct based on contemporary maps, but in the modern day, certain key parts of the area have been given new names, and therefore Google Maps will not be your friend if you're an intrepid location hunter trying to find where the TARDIS landed. To understand where the Doctor Who production team worked their magic in the winter of 1976, we'll need to dig into old photos and other screen productions in order to figure out exactly how the locations were utilised. The shot which introduces us to the main filming location first focuses on the overhead connecting walkways between the warehouses. The production documentation tells us that this material is shot on Clink Street near the bridge, which is the term used to refer to these walkways. But, no matter how much browsing you do of Google Street View, you will end up frustrated when trying to match up this shot. It has changed too much in the nearly 50 years since shooting took place. Instead, we must turn to old photos when the bridges still existed to try to fix on the position. Here are two of the best available photos labelled as Clink Street, showing how it used to look, each providing a view which seems to have the potential to match the TARDIS landing site. At a glance, this photo seems to match the closest, especially with the angles of the walkways. It was taken somewhere on Clink Street on the 14th of August 1980, less than 4 years after the filming of Doctor Who. But things don't quite line up. If this is the same low bridge in both pictures, then the TARDIS would have to be roughly here. But in the Doctor Who footage, there is a warehouse standing immediately behind the TARDIS prop, which is absent in the photograph. So let's put that to one side for a moment in favour of examining the other photo for clues which might be gleaned. In Talons, there is an unusually narrow pavement on the left of shot. On the photograph, there is a suspiciously similar narrow pavement. And now, if we look again and accept that the perspective of the walkways is misleading due to where the camera was positioned, then we have indeed found a photograph of the TARDIS landing site, because we have the narrow pavement on the left and the looming warehouse immediately behind in both images. But there's still one problem. We don't know precisely where this is, because all these buildings have been demolished. If there's nothing in this photo left in the present day, then we can't match it up to anything, and we are none the wiser where the TARDIS was. So taking a second look over the other photo to aid in our investigation. What immediately jumps out is that this photo has the narrow pavement on the right. Is it possible this photo is therefore showing Clink Street but facing in the opposite direction to the TARDIS? A close examination of each picture shows, sure enough, the building is a match on the left of one picture and on the right of the other, with the same extruded brickwork, 3 windows, inset brick channel, and basement windows. Everything lines up. So that confirms that these two pictures show the same section of street facing in opposite directions. But is this useful information to aid in our investigation? There's something eye-catching in the reverse angle. This untidy edge of stone brickwork jogged a memory from all the endless scrolling around Google Street View. As it turned out, this very ancient piece of masonry would be the key to mapping out this section of street. Returning to the Google Street View, we can see this piece of wall, and careful alignment confirms it is the same. No doubt perfectly obvious to someone who knows Southwark. This is the edge of Winchester Palace. A different picture reveals the impressive site. Originally built as a grand townhouse for the bishops of Winchester, it fell out of ecclesiastical use around 1700, at which point it was divided into tenements and warehouses. Most of the original structure was destroyed by fire in 1814, but the wall containing the rose window was left standing when warehouses were rebuilt on either side. At first on the west side, as seen here, and then eventually on the east side too. This map shows how the rose window wall, highlighted in blue, became sandwiched between newer warehouses, with the one on the east side incorporating the ruins of the old Winchester Palace. Images of this central warehouse, incorporating the ruin and built directly against the rose window, are few and far between. But this photo, taken in 1940, reveals the ecclesiastical echoes of the remains of the Grand Palace, with its distinctly church-like doorway. This image is a composite view created using a couple of different sources so we can see the full extent of the site before it was remodelled. The far warehouse on the end, on the right-hand corner, had its upper floors partially dismantled and rebuilt, and the warehouse in the middle with the church door was demolished in 1943, exposing the ruins and the rose window once again. During the 1970s, the warehouse closest to the camera, on the right, in part incorporated a garage and therefore had a dropped curb, although it's unclear exactly how this structure might have looked in the mid-20th century or earlier. Eventually, the end warehouse was demolished too, clearing the entire site, revealing the rest of the ruins of Winchester Palace and leaving the site in its current state, fully on view with its adjacent rose window. So now we have confirmed 100% that the stone wall on the centre left of this photo is that of Winchester Palace. Therefore, we can position on a map exactly where this photo was taken. And we've also confirmed that the other photo is definitely a reverse angle of the same place, now with the ruins of Winchester Palace on the right of picture. Which means that we can now say precisely where the TARDIS landing site was, because it was this angle which matched the shot from Talons of Weng-Chiang, which has the warehouse built on Winchester Palace on the right of picture. We now know that the police box was sited at the far eastern end of Clink Street, and we can mark it on the map here. But when we switch back to the modern viewpoint of this exact spot, the reason for our inability to locate the TARDIS landing site becomes clear. Nothing is the same anymore. The whole building behind the TARDIS has gone, and as well as an entirely new modern structure built over the old roadway, there is also now a new passage leading to the dock behind the looming warehouse, where you can currently see a replica of the ship called the Golden Hind. The entirely missing looming warehouse behind the TARDIS is that of St. Mary Overy's Wharf, a structure which barely seems to have been photographed before it was knocked down. If this is the only photograph we've got of the place where the Doctor and Leela first stepped into Victorian London, then we're going to have to sustain our cinematic sleuthing to attain our architectural ambitions. But as mentioned earlier, we can't even enjoy all of the footage that was shot on this location. So what was the extent of the material shot here? Surprisingly, when examining the script for Talons, a host of missing material was unmasked. This shot of the TARDIS was filmed on the night of the 14th of December 1976. And originally, so was the rest of the scene with the Doctor and Leela stepping from the TARDIS. In the rehearsal script, the opening dialogue has Leela saying,
"It's ridiculous. Why must I wear these clothes?"
To which the Doctor replied,
"Because you can't walk round Victorian London in skins."
His original reasoning for this is unknown, but it was initially replaced with the line,
"You'll catch your death of cold."
But ahead of filming, this line was tweaked again to the more idiosyncratic rationale that her skins outfit will frighten the horses. Then, in the scene as filmed on Clink Street, the Doctor determined their position was not far away from the music hall, and he inspects a poster, which was a specially created prop taken to the location and pasted up on the wall. But more of that shortly. The Doctor asks her to hurry, and she replies,
"Hurry? In these?"
with a cut to a close-up on her shoes, before the final shot was captured of them hurrying away. But after the location work was complete, yet more rewrites were desired to sharpen the dialogue and emphasise the Eliza Doolittle angle of the Doctor educating his savage friend during the story. In the new version of the scene, the Doctor refrains from informing her that they're going to the music hall. He says he's trying to teach her about her ancestors, and the joke about her being unable to hurry in her shoes is deleted. This rewrite necessitated a pickup of that scene, but it wasn't possible to go back to the location, and therefore a quick and simple set was created to replicate Clink Street in studio. The set was created using several stock flats of plastic brick wall pattern, the TARDIS prop, and nothing else except one iconic piece of set dressing. The Doctor gets his first look at the man who would become his adversary via a music hall style poster. The Doctor tells Leela he will take her to the theatre, and he hoped to catch Little Titch, but will have to settle for Lee Sen Chang. The poster design was originally created by the BBC design department and is repeatedly used as a plot point in this story. Replicas of other real Victorian posters were employed on location, as we will see, but there were only 2 designs printed new specially for this production, and this is the only one used in studio. This famous creation is available to purchase as an A2 print using the link in the top corner of this video or in the description box below. In the broadcast version of the episode, the final shot of this scene is the only surviving piece of film footage shot on Clink Street as the Doctor strides off to the south to what will become another significant location, also shot on that same night. Viewing the map, this is the route that the Doctor and Leela are taking, walking south down Cathedral Street. The next shot in the sequence was captured a few hundred yards away, on the other end of Clink Street, looking back towards the TARDIS landing site. The shot, featuring the unfortunate Mr. Buller, suggests that the doomed cab driver might have just walked past a strange blue box. But Buller would scarcely have time to wonder as he comes face to face with the preternatural perambulation of the diminutive devil, Mr. Sin, in a nightmarish nook at Clink Wharf. In the next shot, the Doctor and Leela are seemingly continuing their walk south, but is this what we're really seeing, or is it another illusion from the talented technicians of television? Behind the pair, in this dolly shot, an incongruous modern metal shuttered door can be seen, and to its left side you can just make out the iron wall mounting for a metal hoist. So is this really south of the TARDIS landing site? Browsing photographs of the street south of the TARDIS will produce no shuttered doors or metal hoists. So let's look instead to the Clink Wharf corner, which Mr. Buller has just reached and bumped into Mr. Sin. Observe, on the extreme left of picture we can see a metal shuttered door with a hoist to its side. This photo was taken on the far west end of Clink Street, looking towards the Nook by Clink Wharf, and this particular little corner will become important shortly. Framing the image is the archway, which reveals that this view is from underneath Cannon Street Railway Bridge. This is the location which, on the production documentation, is part of Location C on their map. But it is referred to as the tunnel. The same view in the modern day shows that the shutters have gone, to reveal a doorway, and to the left side the metal hoist is still in situ 46 years after filming the Talons of Weng-Chiang. But this means that the walk taken by the Doctor and Leela is indeed a geographical impossibility. Having left the TARDIS on Clink Street walking south, the pair have mysteriously reappeared on the west end of Clink Street, travelling east towards the TARDIS. And this is where they attempt to come to the aid of Mr. Buller, who is being attacked. The only explanation is that space has folded in on itself like the confusing corridors of Castrovalva. When they halt to listen to a haunting howl, we are shown this shot of the suitably Victorian-looking doors labelled Peter Hoare & Company International Shipping and Forwarding Agents. To the side of this door is another hoist, but the arm of this one extends further out from the wall. A shot from the modern day shows that again this antique hoist is still in place. This is the south side of the tunnel, looking back towards the direction that the Doctor and Leela have just walked from. So let's now turn our attention to that notorious nook where Mr. Buller met his ignominious end. This is referred to on the production paperwork as the corner, although confusingly there is another location referred to as the corner, which is somewhere else we'll come to in a minute. Ignoring the discontinuity with the TARDIS landing site, the real-world geography all makes sense, as this is where Mr. Buller looked over his shoulder as he approached his doom, this is where he was ambushed by Mr. Sin, and this is the spot where the Doctor and Leela hear his scream and march ahead to his aid. So this is the corner where the ensuing fight scene takes place. Unlike the TARDIS location, there is no mystery surrounding this site. This corner is now the entrance to the Clink Prison Museum and a neighbouring restaurant. At the time of filming, the area was very run down, but with some simple dressing, it became a more believable living location. Empty wooden barrels were stacked up, which became props during the fight scene, and these were positioned next to a doorway with a barred window, seen here. This is another view of the very same window from a different production, one which we'll reveal in a moment and which has a great deal to offer. Also adding detail to the surroundings were more posters, this time likely to be reproductions of genuine Victorian items. One advertises a dining room where you can get hot soup, and another is promoting a lecture discussing the evils of drink, taking place at the Temperance Hall Sunday next at 7 p.m. Beneath the Clink Wharf sign was a large loading window with corrugated metal shutters. This was hidden during the Doctor Who shoot using a drape. So where, you might ask, are all these good quality images coming from? Thanks to the tireless work of the folk at realstreets.com, they've identified several other productions which use this exact location, and the most useful of which is called Murder by Decree. This was a 1979 released Sherlock Holmes film starring Christopher Plummer as the fictional detective, in which he is investigating the real-life crimes of Jack the Ripper. It was based in part on a book called The Ripper File, which was in turn a novelisation of a TV series called Jack the Ripper, which was a spin-off of Z-Cars. This production was made towards the end of 1978, and therefore roughly 2 years after the Talons of Weng-Chiang. As well as showing these excellent general views of the area where Mr. Buller is attacked, it also provides good close-ups of the derelict building next to where the barrels are stacked up, which is now a restaurant, and there is a camera angle from inside the same building looking out at where the camera crew for Talons would have been set up for most of the shooting of the fight. So the question on everyone's lips: if the footage outside Clink Corner is this good, could Murder by Decree also have equally good shots of the TARDIS landing site, and finally give us the angles we crave to properly envisage this largely lost location shoot? Unfortunately, we come up against a similar problem as before. If we don't already have a high-resolution image of that TARDIS position, how would we recognise it when we see it in Murder by Decree? On reviewing this footage, we can see something familiar once again: the stone wall at the edge of the rose window. And a few paces later, another extremely distinctive landmark, the damage to the brickwork seen in this photo. And that tells us that at this exact moment in the film, the TARDIS location is just off screen to the right. And hallelujah, this is exactly where Sherlock Holmes and Mary Kelly walk next. Then, by laboriously stitching together every glimpse of the background in these shots, we can finally build up a good, clear picture of the area where the TARDIS prop was positioned in this corner, with the camera down the road to the left. But doing so immediately presents us with another mystery. On screen, the TARDIS is standing on the raised pavement, and yet now we have a good look at the location, we can see the width of the pavement is clearly far too narrow to accommodate the TARDIS prop. This therefore must have necessitated the production team bringing rostra to place underneath the box to make their own pavement. Using another couple of shots from Murder by Decree, we can piece together an even better angle showing how the TARDIS prop was situated and filmed. And it's very enjoyable to have this entire location mapped out, since discovering that a whole load of lost footage was shot here with Tom Baker and Louise Jameson, albeit in darkness, which was later replaced by the studio pickup. Although the studio set is perfectly adequate, it has none of the detail and real character of the filming location, all of which is now lost to time. The film shot list shows that the movements of the actors on location was later reproduced exactly when it was picked up in studio. Therefore, we can say that in the lost footage, Tom Baker would have walked left to the Lee Sen Chang poster, which means we can position it at the real location on the wall of the warehouse here, to the left of the TARDIS prop. But then all we have in the final cut of the show is this last glimpse of the real street as the Doctor and Leela walk away from the TARDIS heading south. Although Murder by Decree provides the best images of the area, it's not the most famous production to make use of this street. In February and March of 1981, the same street was visited again for filming of another cult hit, and once again the phantasmagoria of filmmaking created a baffling illusion that could confound contemporary cognitive comprehension. The John Landis directed American Werewolf in London used the exact section of street as has just been scrutinised, and the views from this film allowed us to piece together the montage that showed the warehouses closest to the camera by the rose window prior to its demolition. But something is amiss with our view of the TARDIS landing site, and one line of dialogue highlights this peculiarity.
It's a dead end down there!
Which we know it isn't. That end of the street should be a right turn, which is the direction the Doctor and Leela walk away from the TARDIS. This tells us that the location was adapted with the use of a false wall to seal off the corner and therefore hide the TARDIS landing site and St Mary Overy's warehouses, which were visible behind it. Despite this clandestine construction, it still offers an enjoyable connection to know that the werewolf has his final confrontation only a few meters away from where the police box was located. But it's the film Murder by Decree which still has more to offer for the inquisitive Doctor Who fan due to its extensive daylight shoot in this area. As explained, the Doctor and Leela walked away from the TARDIS to the south down Cathedral Street, a route which is also taken by the Great Detective and his female companion too. We are therefore given several good views of St Mary Overy's warehouse, which was later completely demolished. But there's an extra point of significance and link to Talons provided here. At the end of this street is a hairpin bend going left of picture. This distinctive rounded corner has two notable features: a set of protective metal stripes and a painted sign pointing the way to the offices of St Mary Overy's wharf. Here is a photograph from the time showing a clear view. The metal stripes help prevent damage from vehicles on tight corners, which would stop you losing large chunks of brickwork as seen here. But where else might you have seen this sign? It is very prominent when Li Sen Chang's carriage rides past in the Talons of Weng-Chiang. This beautifully ominous shot then visually links the sinister figure in the passing carriage with the unfolding mystery as the camera lingers on the wall opposite and we see another set of posters. Two of them are real Victorian posters taken from stock, one of which is a rather amusing example of health and safety gone mad, as the Metropolitan Commissioner of the 1890s sent out a stark warning about the terrifying dangers of discarded orange and banana peels. The main prop here is of course another new creation printed for the production, evoking the genuine horrors that had occurred in 1888 with the crimes of Jack the Ripper. This shot was also captured on the 14th of December, the same night as the lost TARDIS footage was completed. The TARDIS prop must have been removed for this carriage shot, otherwise it would have been visible here. Leaving it in situ would presumably have caused a hindrance to the vehicle. If, however, we choose to believe the TARDIS is still present when the carriage drives down the street, then we can connect up all of the pieces of the action into a continuous journey in which Li Sen Chang's carriage rounds a corner where he would have shortly after driven past the TARDIS, then turned left along Clink Street and past the site where his minions eliminated Mr. Buller. And what's particularly enjoyable about this hairpin bend leading towards the TARDIS is that although everything around it has been knocked down and remodelled, this rounded piece of brickwork and the protective stripes have been preserved as a local landmark. By turning to the left, this becomes our view of the corner where the TARDIS landed. The present view is quite unrecognisable, but now, armed with the exact layout, you too can stand precisely where the TARDIS crew first stepped out into the Victorian fog, nearly 50 years ago.
Because, ha 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 ha.